Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Adamson, and thank you for attending this webinar on the art of relating. Know that you can type a question in the chat box at any time during the webinar. Now, before we delve into the art of relating, if I may, I would like to ask you to close your eyes and take one very deep breath. Now, as you slowly release your breath and still keeping your eyes closed, envision your day. Just follow your day from that moment of first consciousness when you got up to this exact point right now. Take notice of all those with whom you related, those who are closest to your heart, partners, family, friends, maybe coworkers, neighbors, classmates. Now extend your perception of relating to those people with whom you are not close. Maybe the cashier in a department store or grocery store, a receptionist at the doctor's office. And here's the kicker. The review of your day must be complete, meaning that as you review your day, you must include those with whom your relating was not so good. That guy that cut you off on the freeway, the lady at the grocery store that gave you the quick up and down and then frowned, maybe that fellow employee who every time you walk into the office looks at his watch and just shakes his head. Take note of each and every one with whom you related to. And note you can include pets, your environment, especially nature, and maybe most importantly, how you related to yourself during the day. Now, from all these interactions, see the geometry of light, those infinite lines of relating to all with whom you related to. And with that in the forefront of your consciousness, I would like you to take one more deep breath. And as you exhale, open your eyes. Reviewing your day through the lens of relating can be almost overwhelming. And why is that? Because the totality of our existence is relating. Truth is, there is not 1 second of our existence that is not relating. And for a moment, just ponder upon that. The totality of our existence is relating. Just that truth is overwhelming. But let's take that one step further. If the totality of our existence is relating, then the only variable is how we relate. And ponder upon that for a moment. For that means we determine the quality of our existence by the manner in which we relate. That is why we must strive to raise our relating to the highest level possible, ideally to the level of art. Artful relating should be the only language through which we communicate every day. And ponder upon the world if we all did that, or maybe just half of us did that, or 1/4 of us did that, or even pessimistically, 10% of all of us living on this planet related artfully. The world would be a much different place. And that is why we must start to relate in an artful manner. Now, even though we determine the quality of our existence by the manner in which we relate, it's important here to distinguish between existence and circumstances. Our existence can have a foundation of joy even during very trying, turbulent, and sorrowful circumstances. Let me give you an example. Let's say someone very close to you moves away, gets very sick, or even passes away. The circumstances that you are in are sad and trying, but your existence can have an underlying foundation of positivity, even of joy. If that person is sick, then we positively try to do everything we can to get them better. If someone moves away, we feel the emotion of the loss and separation, but we feel and share in the joy of that person taking that next step on their journey. And that can even extend to when someone passes away. Instead of viewing it as a loss upon what is actually just the physical level of being, we can wish them well on their journey because we know that life is eternal. And as we see them take that next step of their journey, we know with complete surety that this is not goodbye, it is just until we meet again. That is what, despite the circumstances, having control over the totality of our existence is. And that is our goal. That is what refinement moves us towards. Always keeping in mind that no matter what happens, we know we are moving forward. And when adversity happens, and this is such an important part of the art of relating, that adversity is only there to tell us that something is wrong. Something needs attention, a lesson must be learned. Adversity and pain only occur so that we can continue upon the path that is our reason for being. So when adversity does occur, it is only to bring to our awareness that our being has strayed from its path. And in the annoying words of every GPS monitor, is recalculating. And that is one of the truths of the art of relating. Pain is only a signal, and adversity always contains a lesson. In turn, our response forms the nature of our existence. And this is reflected in art. Some paintings, some music, some literature does not evoke happiness, but it can still be art, and sometimes great art. And that is what we seek to do every second of every minute of every day. Now, here's the cool part. We do not do this alone. In fact, we are never alone. Unfortunately, this is not the time and place to discuss the intricacies of that truth, but it is the time and place to discuss the best part of the art of relating. And that is that we have the ability to travel through this path of the art of relating at what is the highest level of existence, the greatest form, the highest art, and that is the oneness of love. Truth is, the literal definition of love is oneness, a state of dynamic union, a oneness that ultimately results in the disappearance of self and the creation of something new, a higher form of existence, the highest form of unity. So let's talk about how we get there. We attain the oneness of love through relating. But what is relating? Although the totality of your existence, my existence, and the existence of every single person upon the planet is relating, very few can define relating. But the truth is, it is rather simple to define. Relating is just a three-step sequence of extending, connecting, and interacting. It's much like a phone call. You dial the number, that is extension. A person answers, that is connection. A conversation begins, that is interaction. The level of that interaction determines the quality of your relating. And that variable literally determines the quality of your existence, my existence, the existence of the whole planet. And again, take a moment and allow this simple truth to sink in. The only thing standing in the way of a whole and joyful existence is the manner in which you relate. This is so important because it illustrates another truth. You control the quality of your life. You control the quality of your existence. Yet all too often, our approach to life is one of apathetic resignation, a passive belief that we have no real control over the direction or quality of our lives. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. If you want to change the quality of your life, if you need to change the quality of your life, simply change the manner in which you relate. Do not allow yourself to believe that others have any control over the quality of your existence. Nobody, including partners, family, friends, employers, etc., determine the quality of your life? You do, solely by the manner in which you relate. And so the importance of your method of relating now becomes paramount, as does your need to raise it to its highest level, a level of artful expression. And it should be pointed out that this is an endeavor not only to be attempted with lovers and family and friends, but extended beyond to communities, cities, and nations, the whole planet. And from that viewpoint, it's rather easy to see that humankind desperately needs to improve its manner of relating. Fortunately, the heart of humanity is good, and our lineage is drawn from spirit. We are only in need of direction. And it is here that we find the importance and the value of the art of relating. By approaching relating as an art form, and by seeking its highest form of expression, each relationship is a potential masterpiece. All that is needed is to strive to make every relationship a work of art, and to allow every day to be the canvas upon which you continue to express your art. Now, I know that I presented a lot of information and some different concepts in a rather short period of time here. So let's take a break for questions, and please use the chat box to type your questions so that I don't miss it. So Jan asks, how does the oneness of love occur? Okay. Well, as I described earlier, there are 3 steps to relating: extension or reaching out, connection, and interaction. And I use the example of a phone call, right, to illustrate this 3-step sequence. You dial the number, that's extension. Person answers, that is connection. Conversation begins, that is interaction. Now, here's the answer to your question, and the coolest part of that 3-step sequence. It's always from this 3rd step of relating, interaction, that the oneness of love occurs. For should the blend of energy through relating continue to flow and build, at a certain point within the relationship, the amount and level of energy becomes so powerful that it creates union on that level of being, and two become one. Even cooler is that the effect of this union creates an incredible release of energy that not only further unites, but also elevates those joined to a higher form of existence, the oneness of love. And here's the coolest part. We are so fortunate because we see the greatest example of the power of love every day. It rises in the east and it sets in the west. And everything in our universe revolves around it. Yes, our sun is the greatest example of the power of love. For just as the sun powers itself by fusing 2 atoms together to become a completely new element, 2 atoms of hydrogen into 1 atom of helium, thank you, Bill Nye, so too does the power of love manifest from fusion. And that fusion ultimately results in the creation of something new, an exalted form of existence. What is even cooler is that this oneness, it's attainable on all 4 levels of being, meaning that at every level of your existence, you can individually and collectively feel the power and oneness of love. And in this analogy, it's also good to remember that just as cloud cover can block the visual perception of the sun, it is still there, just like the possibilities and the existence of love is still there. We just have to sometimes break through that cloud cover to see it. And from Sandra, is trust the foundation of meaningful relating? And how does one relate to a contrarian? Well, I think trust is an essential part of the art of relating. I don't know how anybody can truly build a relationship unless there's trust. which means that I think that trust starts at the level of knowing that you can have that back and forth of the energy of relating on whatever level, okay? And it's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. And that's meaningful relating. But you have to trust that that expression will be received and then returned and will be truthful and honest. So that is, trust definitely plays into the foundation of any relating, because it's just built on a house of sand, literally, if that trust is not there. So you asked, how does one relate to a contrarian? I guess that's a tough one. One would be not to take that a person who is contrary to what you say or how you act or in any way, I wouldn't take it personally. I would take it that that is part of that being and accept them at whatever level they feel that they have to be contrary upon. And that's acceptance. And that is also part of the energy that happens when you relate. Usually, there should be a harmonious acceptance and then transference of energy back and forth. It's kind of like dancing. One person leads, the other person follows. But the cool thing about love, and I didn't say this earlier, okay? When you have that energy and from that fusion, which is like an explosion of sort of energy, what happens is that in order to sustain it, that energy has to flow back and forth. And it's not just a volley back and forth like a tennis game. It is according to need. And if your partner needs, let's give an example here. If your partner needs to receive emotional energy, then you give it. And it's relating, okay, because all relating is energy. But if you need to receive it, then that polarity switches back and forth. And that is how love is not only sustained, but that is how love is built upon. Going back to Sandra's question here, okay? The first part of it is that the energy, if you have a true foundation, then the energy that goes back and forth continues to elevate you, and it becomes stronger and more powerful and more magnetic. So that is an essential part. With the contrarian, to get back to the point, if that back and forth does not happen, what happens is that the energy from that oneness that you have, it is easier for that energy to just dissipate and the oneness is gone. And we can look back at any point of our life and see where that oneness just disappeared. And we can take a look at our relationships now. Where is there oneness and where isn't? Or where is it not present? And this is an important point. There's a difference between sentiment and affection and love. Love is oneness. Sentiment and affection means that you care about somebody. The oneness of love is at a different level. And I often see this in families where you care for fellow family members, but you're not one with them because that oneness is just not there. And sometimes that happens so that we can understand and grow as far as really realizing and experiencing the oneness of love, and then what is outside of that bubble, which is just relating. Diane asks, what do you think is the cause of so much friction in the public relating today? Do you think it's astrological or something else or both? I think the cause of so much friction that's happening in the world today is just the fallacy of us against them, which is a basic part of our relating as humans collectively that we need to throw away. The tactic of us against them is used daily, and we see it in the news, in government, in every area of society, but it's based on a fallacy. And that fallacy is that there's a them and there isn't. So the cause of not realizing that we're all human and not seeing the collective strength that we have from that shared humanity, that is something we do have to realize. And I do think that that's what is happening right now, is so that we do realize that. Because if you're talking about the strength and power of the oneness of love, magnify that as far as the strength of the oneness of humanity. We could accomplish anything if we just realized that, okay, by the way, we're all human, and that the diversity that distinguishes us is not something bad. And that's a really important point, because so many of us see or think that different is bad. Different is just different. As long as there is no harm in that difference, then that is just the unique expression of every single human upon the planet, if that makes sense. Do I think it's astrological? I don't know if I would attribute it to that. I think it's where humanity has to grow, because I think it has to be realized that we're just not here out of happenstance. We have a reason for being, and that humanity has that reason for being also. And that's one of the cool things about the Institute for Global Transformation. We help in the realization of our reason for being. And as is mentioned on, the webpage, there are ways in which we can transform, which is, the mission of, the Institute, on a personal, on a societal, and on a global level. And right now, on a global level and on every level, we have to realize that us against them is a fallacy that literally needs to be discarded. So I hope that answered you there. Nora, why is it so difficult for us to remove our filters through which we perceive our world? How can we try and remove or minimize the use of this filter so that we can experience what the universe is bringing to us in the true sense? Nora, that kind of relates to what I was just talking about. The filters that we have, and one of them is the feeling of comfort that comes from thinking that we are exclusive, because there's a protection to that. It's difficult because what is familiar and comfortable sometimes, or most of the time, is not truth. So if it's comfortable, and this gets into the area of change, which I want to address in a bit, we can either realize that we are here to refine ourselves, and that's part of the art of relating, okay, in the greater human sense and individually. But part of that is removing these filters so that we can relate in an honest manner, in an open manner. And that takes courage too. And I think part of that, in fact, maybe most of it, has to do with just realizing that we are human, and pretty much, I would say, dropping all of the exclusivity that happens through different aspects of our diversity, if that makes sense. I hope that answered that question there. So getting to the second part, okay, I don't think that I addressed that correctly. Getting to that realization of our collective humanity, of our shared humanity, allows us to then experience what the universe is bringing to us, and you say in the true sense. Okay, so by realizing that we are one collective humanity and getting to that level of oneness, not only on a personal level, but on a collective level, then we can experience things in a way that we could not. If we think, it's an interesting thing. People think that hate is the opposite of love. It's not. Isolation is. And as long as we continue to think that we can isolate ourselves, we will not experience what the universe is bringing to us, because we will be seeing things through blinders and not seeing the truth of that unity that is a reality. So I think that in this case, us against them has to drop away, and we cannot be threatened by anything different. we should pretty much revel in it, because to me, the differences that we each have on so many levels is just, how can I put this? I guess it's a testimony to the palette of the creator, if that makes sense. Because if you look at each person individually and see their unique beauty instead of seeing it as a threat, then that is what we can really see as far as the truth of the creation and our role in it. Okay, Lyrda. How do we know when we are experiencing the oneness of love? Do you just know, or are there indications that it can occur? That might be the most difficult question to answer. And some consciously experience this union and they know it. And you can hear the terms like they describe it as being knocked off their feet or struck by lightning. And others just know that their life has changed, and it's a gradual thing where you feel that oneness and you know that it's not just you, it's us. Just that feeling that your being has changed. And then there are still others that at some point in their life have yet to experience this oneness. All I can say is that you know it is the oneness of love because there's nothing like it. And I know that's not the best answer, but that's the only one there is, because this oneness, which is actually a reflection of the true state of the spiritual realm, because that is the nature of that realm, it's above the mind. We can't really describe it. It has to be experienced, just like the oneness of that level of our being. So I wish I could give you a better example, but I can't, because the experience of the oneness of love is really above words. But for anybody, okay, and this is really important, this might be the credo of the art of relating. Everyone should know this. The aspiration, the pursuit, the attainment of the oneness of love is an essential part of the human experience, and should be, and will be experienced by all. It literally is our destiny. And that truth, if we carry nothing more like from this webinar, if we carry that with us, that's all we need. And I wish I could give you more of a description, but I can't. But hopefully that gives you an inkling. Okay, Sandra. How does one quickly discern the receptive language when one approaches someone they do not know? That's just a talent like anything else. To know where someone wants to connect and interact, and to then take it to the next level. Okay, so I say that in the art of relating, there's 4 levels in your studio. Okay, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. You need to know where the communication is. You need to know if the communication is authentic. And you need to know, should you be relating to this person? This is, I think, part of just the human experience and refinement. Yeah, I mean, con artists are good at this, okay? But this gets down to, this is a personal belief, okay? I think we as humanity have a sixth sense, and it has nothing to do with seeing dead people, okay? And Bruce Willis. I think that there is a sixth sense here that we know what's right and wrong. We know what people are right and wrong in our lives or what they're doing. I think we know this. Now, we can avoid it. We can not listen to it, but I think we know. And I really think that it's a balance of experience, logic, and intuition. And if something, right, that's intuition. You're right, Nora. But you also have to balance that, okay? We can't just feel it. Those parts, it has to be a combination so that we can truly intuit and logically perceive where a person's at. And that's part of learning your art. It's kind of like learning a different brush stroke, or a way of learning your musical instrument or your writing or any other art. That is developed along the way. As long as you're dedicated to it, you will get to be an artist, and you have to trust that. But that's the combination that I would start with. I think we're all intuitive. I think we all know what's right, what is wrong. I think we can all pretty much tell. I don't think we listen to it as much as we should. Okay. Are there any more questions? Here we go. Oh, how do you relate better when you think you are having a spirited discussion with someone and they think that you are arguing? That's a great question, and something that would usually be what, with a family member or, somebody that you're close to usually. I think that is a matter of perception also. So knowing how we relate is really important, and knowing where our flaws are and knowing where we need to refine ourselves is really, really important. That's why we're here. And I don't think that there's any doubt about that. So in the art of relating, I say that every relationship is a potential masterpiece. That includes the relationship we have with ourselves, and that we have to be able to constantly refine it so that we are constantly becoming a more refined piece of art. And I use the analogy of that, sometimes we have to use a jackhammer or a chisel, and sometimes it just needs fine sanding. I think that with your question, Jan, it has to know with how are you relating? How are you communicating? And then I think there's a way of bringing down the level of communication and making sure that the other person knows that this is a mutual thing where you are working towards the same goals, and that it is not an us against them thing, kind of like what we talked about before. How did I know? Intuition, Jan. Let's see. Alan has a question. Oh, Alan, this is a good question. Thanks. Is there value in not relating in the sense that two people vehemently disagree, something they both care about but see it totally differently and cannot agree? Yes. and that's a very intuitive question. Sometimes the art of relating is not relating at all. And I'm seeing this more politically now than I ever have before, where it's just, there are just two sides to what people perceive, and there's just no middle ground, which is too bad, because we can vehemently disagree, but we can also work towards the eradication of harm, which is where we unite. If we, in a human sense, drop the us against them and work towards the eradication of harm, then we can have different opinions, viewpoints, perspectives, but we can accomplish something. And that is not what is happening today, which is why I think we need the art of relating. And that's not self-aggrandizement. That is just what we as humanity need right now. I mean, it seems to me that especially now, the collective psyche of humanity is just tired, and justifiably so. It's really gotten beaten up, if that is correct English. So getting back to your question, the value in not relating is when you take a look at the relationship and say, this is harmful, it's not good, and there is no possibility of it getting better in the future. Then I think that it is artful to not relate. And this is the analogy that I use. We all breathe the same air, but we have a choice in deciding if we get that air in a mouth-to-mouth fashion, and from who, okay? So we're not going to receive it from everybody like that. And we have an obligation to ourselves, because the underlying thing here is harm. If the relating is harmful, then it must either be solved, okay, and brought to a level of not even art, but just decency and civility. Or when that possibility is not there, then I would say definitely the art of relating is the art of not relating. And I hope that that answered your question. And Nora says, can we agree here that every journey is unique? Hence, everyone determines their truth based on this. There is no right or wrong. Once we see that, we can be less precious about imposing our views or even judging others' views. In the process of being right or kind, always choose kind. That is what I believe in. I think that what you're talking about here is very powerful, because loving kindness is an incredible power that comes from the highest spiritual levels. But there is right and wrong, okay? And we determine that simply by what I said before. That is harm. So if harm is being caused, then that's wrong. Now, we can choose not to make it about us against them and unite under us against harm, which is actually something that I'm writing about. But that is really important, because harmful is wrong in any way, shape, or form. Now, the way that we eradicate it should be united, and only as humans, because then it eliminates the us against them. That's where I think we have to strive to right now. I'm hoping that we're real close. I see in this next generation, I think that they are going to make quantum leaps in getting to that level. I think we have to give them, those of us who are a little bit older, we have to give them the tools for this. That is why, even though we're talking about all this, I think that we have to realize that I think the future is going to be good. We have to make sure that we work together towards that. And this is one way in which we can do it. Okay, Lyrita said, Jan, I've had that happen to me so often that people think I'm being argumentative, but I'm just thinking things out. Sometimes I find I have to pull back on how I say things to learn to just deliver the thought, tone, animation, etc. Sometimes cause people to want to defend themselves oddly. And that's a good point. I do see this happening with those who we are closest with, right? But again, if we go back to the basic thing about harm, it is, are we expressing ourselves in a harmful way? And maybe you can gauge that to the environment. You can take a look at intent here too. So if we can get to the intent of somebody that maybe is not expressing themselves in a way that they should, then that's a great level of being and perception. Very few of us can do that, because we get caught up in what is the back and forth and how it affects those different levels of our being. And we take it personally on both sides. I think, and this is one of the lessons that I definitely have to learn, is sometimes to know that it's just not about us, and then take it from there. That's tough. I think that's one of the last lessons that we learn. But if we can get to that point and realize intention, then our relating will get to a higher level. And then we can relate in the way that we're supposed to on those subjects that need to be discussed. And Jan says, I can so relate to that, Lyrita. I'm an extrovert and tend to think verbally, which I know drives people crazy. Okay, we are at 9:17. I'd like to answer, if I can. I don't know if there's going to be any more questions here in the group chat, but there are a couple questions that were sent in that I think it's important that we probably address these, okay? So, Nora, you sent this in previously, and I did not get a chance to answer this here. You asked about relating to the self, and relating to ourselves is so important. And in your review, if you were here for that beginning part, Not only is it important that we relate to ourselves correctly, it's important that we recognize these four essential parts of our being: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And then we align them so that they all work together in the true and honest expression of our own being. Not easy. That's why we're here. But earlier when we did the review of your day, I mean, how much of your relating was just with you and many parts of your being? And I would imagine it's probably a fair amount of your day, and justifiably so. So know that when it comes to relating to the self, it is an essential part of our being. And it's an essential part of the human experience too. It's very integral to the art of relating, because this is the concept of self-love. So if love is oneness, and it is, self-love is oneness within your own being. And it's not like I'm the greatest. It has nothing to do with narcissism or self-aggrandizement or anything like that. Simply put, self-love is the recognition and harmonious alignment of the four levels of your being, and then the balanced expression of those elements. This is really important because when you get to this level, you can express yourself. And as we talked about earlier, okay, we don't respond except from that foundation of who we really are. And that is, relates to your question about relating to the self. That harmonious alignment of being, it naturally brings about a confident sense of self-esteem and self-expression, and that literally attracts love. It attracts union. It is magnetic. And that's the secret of self-love. Not only does it bring all the elements of your being into alignment, which makes traveling the path of life and being human so much lighter and with so much joy, it also charges your whole being, and it attracts more love between you and others. And not only the emotional love of romance, but also a deeper oneness with family, friends, and ultimately the whole of creation. Let's see what else we have here. There were two people that asked about soulmates and karmic relationships. I just want to touch on this a little bit, and then we'll wrap things up here. So the question was karmic relationships, and is there such a thing as soulmates, and how do you know when you've met them? And this is important for us to discern, and this goes back to Sandra's question too, because sometimes those people that are in our lives that are not the very best for us, it's important to see and know that sometimes this is because of things from the past. So Janie was asking me to comment on karmic relationships, and Joseph is asking me, is there such a thing as soulmates, and how do you know when you've met them? At this point in the evolution of humanity, just about every important relationship in our life is karmic, meaning that there's a past connection to the person you are relating to. Now, without getting too esoteric and off subject, please understand that it is our souls that pretty much map out the course of our lifetime. And that includes the major relationships in our lives. Now, we can follow that course or we can reject it. And that is the foundation of free will. And the intricacy of how this works is far beyond our comprehension, but nothing really happens by chance. By choice, yes. By chance, no. So soulmates are simply those who we have traveled with in previous lifetimes. This does extend beyond romance sometimes. So how do we know it's a soulmate? Usually there's an instant and high degree of comfort or discomfort sometimes, depending on the nature of that past relationship. This brings up an important point. No matter who we relate to, it should be artful. It should be at a high level, further elevating where the relationship was, be it a very good relationship in the past lifetime, or transforming what was a negative relationship into one that is positive. That is artful relating. That is what we strive for. Why do we do that? It's simple, so that we evolve, so that they evolve, so that humanity evolves. Okay, Diane says, Seth, I think that it is an interesting practice to make a conscious practice. That is to review one's day from the context of who you've related to that day as distinct from what you did that day. Thanks for that idea. And thanks so much for the insightful webinar. Much appreciated and much love. Thank you, Diane. For those that don't know, Diane is an integral part of the Institute for Global Transformation. She is an author and has come up with quantum thinking, and I highly recommend that everybody go on the website or her website and check it out. It's pretty powerful. Since we started late, I'm going to go an extra couple of minutes here. Okay, so I think we've answered all the questions. Am I right? Oh, Lyrida. The art of relating means that the soul has realized patterns in their life and is learning from them. This takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice to just be civil, and especially given the amount of outside pressure that is happening right now. But it's our destiny. I mean, that's why we're here. And if we realize that, as was said in the beginning of the webinar here, the totality of our existence is relating, that's where we learn. And if we realize, and this is kind of interesting, I had a friend's daughter call me up. She was going through a breakup, and she's very young. And I tried to impress upon her, and she's very bright and she's very intuitive, that it is through our relationships that we learn. And when we view them not as the us against them type thing, or, oh my gosh, you know, here we go again, then we realize that each one of them furthers us down the path of what is our reason for being. And that it gives kind of a detached perspective to, this is how I learned, this is why I'm here. And just like you say, it takes a lot of practice. But there's a missing part here, and that is that there is that underlying state of existence that we talked about earlier, which is joy. Even through the most heinous circumstances, that faith, that all this is happening for a purpose, it is refinement, and it's furthering me to what is my destiny. That can put a lot of wind at your back. It can make you walk with strength and purpose. And then you realize every instance of relating is just something that can further you and help you in your travels, if that makes sense. So allow me to ask the last question here. What does relating have to do with change and transformation? After all, this is the Institute for Global Transformation and not the Institute for the Art of Relating. Although the totality of our existence is relating, the path that relating takes is the path of change, actually the path of transformation. And it is important that we distinguish between the two. Change just means that something is different. Just change could be wearing a different pair of jeans instead of your go-to favorites, choosing a blue shirt instead of white, choosing to stop wearing workout clothes 24/7, 365. Just change means do this or do that. If one had to look at it geometrically, just change is horizontal. It's a move sideways. Positive change is transformational. And it's transformational change that makes our lives better individually and collectively. Because it's transformational change that guarantees we don't rise only to fall again. And it's transformational change that assures we continue upward in our individual lives and in our human story. Transformational change is ascension. Ascension to a higher level, ascension to a more refined existence, the next step in our evolution. And again, if we look at transformation geometrically, transformation is vertical. But transformation doesn't only mean rising to a higher level, and this is so important. It also means letting go of that which is holding you down. In this way, transformation can be seen as freedom, literally lightening the burden of your being so that you can rise. So how do we do this? Well, since we can't stop change, and it is fruitless and a waste of time to fight it. The only thing that we can do is to embrace it. Embracing change means we move and work with it, work within it. Embracing change means that you control the effect of change by how you react to it. You determine if change is going to happen with seismic ferocity or as a seamless blending from one phase to another, purely by how you react, purely by how you relate. And that is the connection between relating and transformation, an intimate and eternal connection. Relating is our existence, but change is how we travel through that existence. Putting it in another way, if change/transformation is the vehicle by which you travel through life, that vehicle can be something that is very comfortable and even luxurious, or it can be a clunker that jars your whole being as it hits every pothole of life. That is your choice. You can travel the path of change in a limo or in a junker. That choice of travel determined purely by how you react to change, purely by how you relate. Setting aside the automobile analogy here, what I'm really saying is that although change is inevitable, we can affect the nature of change, the way it comes about, its force, its form, and most importantly, how it affects our lives, our existence. How to achieve that positive transformational change in every aspect of your life is the essential talent needed in the art of relating. A talent that will allow you to travel with change as an adventure, and hopefully accept the joy of that journey. And that is the mission of the Institute for Global Transformation, to aid and bring about transformational change. The IFGT has articles, teachers, and courses that puts you on the path of transformation, be it personal, societal, or global. I encourage everybody to go to ifgt.net and explore all that the Institute for Global Transformation offers. I also encourage you to donate to the IFGT to help them continue their mission of bringing about a better world. And if you act right now, there are 2 extra perks for donating. The first is that the IFGT is a 501c3 tax-exempt charitable organization, meaning that your contribution is tax deductible. But if you contribute $50, you get a signed copy of The Art of Relating. If you donate $100, you get a signed copy of The Art of Relating and an Equation for Peace poster. And if you donate $150 or more, you get a signed copy of The Art of Relating, an Equation for Peace poster, and a signed numbered copy of my new book, Human Unity. Most importantly, though, however you can, become a part of the IFGT community. And with that, I'm going to end this webinar. But before I do that, thanks to Marianne Miller and all that IFGT and all the people at IFGT that helped make this webinar a reality. Special thanks, by the way, to Lyrda Barrett and Diane Collins. And lastly, if you are interested in finding out more about the art of relating, you can go to artofrelating.net. It is also through that website that you can contact me. Thanks again to all who have attended. Goodbye now.